Thank you so much for coming back. So we're at the point where we're talking about how oversight measurement, specifically the evaluation, seem to be having a lot of difficulty. And I want to tell you what's going on. So if you haven't met me, this is me. My claim to fame for my friends in San Francisco, where I used to be an engineer and stuff, is that I, 2 hypes, or maybe 3 hypes of machine learning ago, I gave up my position as an industrial lab engineer and joined a PhD program where I remain. So if you have the funds, please buy me coffee. If you skim through my bio, you will notice that I have a lot of skin in the game for AI and privacy. Again, to reiterate, you don't need to care about privacy. The point of this talk is that if you care about oversight, you should maybe get a little bit of knowledge on how these little corners that I've been thinking a lot about could really help us scale oversight. So the warning here is that I will be talking about technical content on the intersection of machine learning and security and privacy, but specifically only some of the solutions that I find underrated and incentive compatible. So they have this, I think, potential to really help us get to a place where the incentives of markets, incentives of organizations, and the incentive of governance can align. And again, this is one of the many solutions, and it will tie really closely to the talks we have heard earlier in the session. So I'm going to present to you this scenario in data depletion. So we're right now at this stage where there's intense market competition, and we're running out of public data to train on for pre-trained models. With this audience, we don't need to talk about scaling loss. So as the models get bigger, they need a lot of data. And under this fierce competition to train the biggest, best performing model, we are running out of public data. But there is actually a lot of private data, and we don't quite know what to do with that yet. On the other hand, for evaluations, we're running really short on how many evaluations we have. Here, I'm talking about the kind of model evaluations, specifically not the ones companies use to inform their decisions when they're developing, but essentially that's what they're used for anyway. We'll get back to that later. If you're an investor in this field, there's this trifecta of things you're spending money on, and that is the data, the talent, and the chips. But if you are spending money right now, much of the engineering and compute are actually spent on engineering data anyway. That includes filtering data, looking at different kinds of data sets, and you're doing all these experiments just to figure out what kind of data works well, what type of cleaning we need to do. And then there are engineers specifically out there trying to procure more data. And they're paying tens of millions of dollars per month to just get more data done for them. Maybe I should ask for the talk to not be recorded. Yeah. Now zooming back in to look at the data economics today. If the data were to be depleted, what is really going on right now? We have 3 things going on. One is that we have this intense competition. It's not just that we're depleting the data, we're also keeping everything associated with a model, including the training data and the evaluation data, secret. It's something that you could get fired for if you leak from these companies, the architecture, the data, et cetera. At the same time, the data that used to be open and sort of public are closing down. We're getting more and more expensive. That includes Reddit, that includes Twitter, now X. And companies that know that their data is valuable are collaborating with different LLM providers, essentially, to have some exclusive access. And we're also seeing these lawsuits over data that was previously public, and something was obvious today that the data was useful. They intended for people to read the newspapers. They didn't quite intend for language models to train on them. And what do we do about that? So data economics is a little bit of a mess right now. What does it have to do with evaluations? We have heard from previous talks that the evaluations we have typically do not scale. And this has many reasons. One of the things is that they are getting more and more complex and domain specific. You come up with an ad hoc evaluation, it becomes kind of useful, and within a month, it becomes no longer useful. This is the state we're in today, and it's exacerbated by this data depletion problem. So right now, it's not just an oversight measurement being stuck. It's really the scalable evaluation science, we may have to rethink the way we're doing evaluation itself so that we could have more sustainable evaluations down the line. Instead, right now, we are being chased by market incentives, and we're spending more and more money to just get these new and harder and more exclusive evaluations made. And we're going to have to update that every single month. I also would like to mention the academic incentives that we saw in the earlier talk about biosecurity, that people want to publish their evaluations, and then they run away. Because in the heart of open science, we want to put your things out there, open, in the clear. And this is what happens. So at the same time, there is some public antagonism towards sharing data. So we're in this stage where in the future, there will not be a lot of people willing to share data. What do we do about that? So some of the solutions I come up with have to do with aligning the market with the economy. So we want to solve the incentives problem there, so we have a healthier way to stop keeping things in complete secret. At the same time, we want to expand data rights of individuals to scale data AI governance. You can talk to me about that in the break, but this is kind of complementary to the things we agree on that we need evaluations. It's just about how to do it. There's private data appraisal, part of my work on market competition. And then there's a secure multi-party computation, that the computations could be very powerful if we're selective about the kind of things we are doing. If we're doing privacy-preserving auditing, they are already possible if you pick the kind of functions that don't require a lot of linearity, nonlinear operations. And then there's unlearning, also relating to the earlier talk. But specifically, I want to talk about data-driven unlearning, not just concept. Yeah, OK. We might need to stop now. I would like to quickly mention that I was part of the big bench curation at the GPT-3 scale. We had linguistic puzzles. But the ugly truth here is that the evaluations were made with sweat and blood and made with love and volunteering. The uglier truth right now is that there's increasing evidence that this data has been leaked. If you were to ask me if I want to scale up the evaluations I had done before, my answer is absolutely not. Right? So what exactly is the incentive for us to do here? Please talk to me later after this. That's my talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I was wondering if you had any thoughts around how we might do some sort of automated evaluations. So I remember maybe like 7 or 10 years ago, everyone doing machine learning also had to develop specific models for specific use cases. And then came out large language models, which are general purpose and can do pretty much any task. Do you see any relationship between the way we went from machine learning to general purpose AI systems? And do you think anything like that might be in play with evaluations as well? Thank you.
I think people focus on general evaluations for language models in this umbrella term of language understanding, which is what Sam also works on. The hard puzzles right now still work, but we do have to come up with harder and harder puzzles, which is why the linguistic puzzle is basically inspired by International Linguistic Olympiad. It's not something a normal human would be able to do, but it's something thousands of high schoolers per year can score nearly perfect on. But we're at this stage where we really need to scale oversight. That's why there's some more on this. But if you look at this automated solution, really hard, not quite language anymore, domain-specific thing of security evaluations. You see that the architecture of it has gotten so complex, and the involvement is so sophisticated that building the evaluations themselves is almost as hard as building the system itself. Right? This gives you a hint at if we keep going on that route, the amount of investment we will need. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
All right. Oh, sorry.
In practice, do the auditing processes that are being used, are they oriented towards mitigating risk or minimizing downside, or do they also have a component where they're saying, oh, here's an upside to the this training data, or an upside is created via this data?
Yeah. So I'm talking about technologies that are secure, preserving, whatever. But the goal here is to not sacrifice any of the model development speed. You don't become the speed bunks in this. You're also not using the kind of privacy technology that are doing training in private in a way that sacrifices accuracy. So you're making zero trade-off there. And the goal here is that the businesses will see it not as an obstacle to the goodness of people getting the benefits of AI, but instead this is something that we can invest more in so that without hurting business bottom line, we can still do our oversight.